In this video, we're going to compare the two great towns in Canada, Toronto and Kitchener. That's what this video is about. We're going to talk about 10 points that can potentially make any town a great place to live. So that's what this video is about. At the end of the video, you will find out which town is a clear winner between Toronto and Kitchener. So stick around as we get right into it. Hello and welcome everybody. If this is your first time to this channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living, eating, sleeping, playing, working, anything to do with Kitchener, Cambridge and Waterloo, then subscribe below and tap on the bell for notification so you can be the first to learn about the current market in Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo and surrounding areas. My name is Dharmik Dixit. I'm a local real estate agent serving Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo and surrounding areas. I do get calls, texts, emails from people just like yourself who are looking for help in making their move to Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, and I absolutely love it. So whether you're thinking of moving in 9 days or 90 days or you're not sure, you can nonetheless reach out to me for any help you need, making it a smooth move to Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo and surrounding areas. Alright, so let's talk about the employment. So as we know, Toronto is considered the financial capital of Canada, and besides that, many of the large corporates are headquartered in Toronto. So a lot of white-collar jobs in Toronto, still people living in suburban areas outside of the city of Toronto still do commute to Toronto for work. And that tells you about the depth of employment opportunities in Toronto. Versus Kitchener, predominantly it used to be a manufacturing town, and jobs were mainly driven by manufacturing and related occupations like logistics, supply chains, transportation, warehousing, all those things. Now that has definitely gotten better in last like 20 to 25 years, since the early days of BlackBerry all the way to present day. We definitely have a little bit more diverse economy, and work options for people living in Kitchener and the region of Waterloo has definitely gotten better. But I would say overall, if you were to really compare with the Toronto and Kitchener in terms of the employment opportunities, definitely Toronto is the winner here. So the point goes to Toronto. All right, so let's talk about the real estate in Kitchener versus Toronto. So average cost of a house sold in April of 2023 in Kitchener was just over $640,000. While in Toronto, an average cost of a house sold in the same month was well over $1.1 million. So what that means is, if you have a certain budget, you definitely get more value for the money you spend after real estate. That makes it Kitchener a bit more attractive, far more attractive, I should say. And same goes for rental as well. If you were to live in an urban town like Toronto, a one-bedroom apartment will cost you way more than a suburban town such as Kitchener, although rental and the housing prices altogether are no longer as affordable as they should be, which is an unfortunate reality. But in this video, we're going to stick to the comparison, an apple-to-apple comparison to Kitchener and Toronto. In this point, Kitchener is a clear winner. All right, so let's talk about the public transit here in Kitchener versus in Toronto. So as we know, in Toronto, it has some of the world-renowned public transit system governed by the TTC, Toronto Transit Commission. It has bus routes, express routes. It has a streetcar that covers a major, core Toronto area, as well as a, subway system that connects many parts of Toronto and the suburbs as well. And of course, it's expanding. Now, in comparison to that, if you ask someone who is commuting to Toronto or living in Toronto, there are definitely outages and delays that's happen more frequent than not. But at the same time, on any given day, if you ask someone living in Toronto, they would say, it's better to commute by public transit than driving by car. So it's that good in Toronto. While in Kitchener, we have our great public transit system that is governed by the Grand River Transit. We have bus routes, we have the express routes, as well as we have our newest LRT system, which was recently introduced, that connects you to the major spots in Kitchener, Cambridge and Waterloo. And it's actually faster than the traditional streetcar system that they have in Toronto. So getting around in Kitchener or any parts of Waterloo region by public transit is definitely accessible, is not bad at all, considering it is a suburban town. But here is where it would be a tie between Kitchener and Toronto when it comes to public transit. All right, let's talk about the traffic scenes between Kitchener and Toronto. So as we know, Toronto is very notorious when it comes to traffic. If you were to ask someone who has ever driven in Toronto, even on a weekday or during the day, during the off-peak hours, you will find that Toronto is very tricky to get around by the car or your own mode of transportation. That's why I said earlier, many people living in Toronto, if you ask them, they do actually prefer to commute by the public transit on any given day versus driving by car. Now, having said that, part of the reason for that is actually the fact that, many people living around the suburbs of Toronto, they still do commute to Toronto for the work and many other reasons. So that's actually, the traffic density does go hand in hand with that, especially if you're around that Gardiner area or DVP in the peak hours. You will see the traffic going out of the city and going in the city in the morning and evening. You will see it's crazy. So versus that, if you were to look about Kitchener, well, we do have a fair amount of traffic. It's not as quiet as it used to be. But having said that, if I were to compare with Toronto, still, private mode of transportation, having your own car is definitely the preferred way to commute or get around the city or out and about. Versus Toronto, because of traffic that's crazy, most of the people living in Toronto, they do prefer to drive. They do prefer to actually commute by public transit on any given day versus having their own car and drive around the city. So we have a clear winner when it comes to traffic, and that's going to be Kitchener. All right, let's talk about the weather between Kitchener and Toronto. So let's talk about the Toronto weather first. As we know, Toronto is sitting at the shores of Lake Ontario. So the lake waters actually helps it moderate the temperatures as well as the moisture level during the winter months. So on any given year, if you were to compare Kitchener versus Toronto, you will find that Kitchener does actually get 10 to 15% more snow in comparison to Toronto for the same year. And this is the data as per the Weather Network. But the reason for that is that Kitchener is pretty much landlocked. We don't have lake waters that can help you moderate the temperatures, cold winds, or the snow or the moisture level. Well, that's the thing. We do have a Grand River, but no lake. So that's actually makes, winters a little bit more chillier. And of course, you will have a little bit more snow to shovel than you would in Toronto. So the clear winner here in terms of weather is Toronto. All right, let's talk about the crime in Kitchener versus Toronto. So Toronto, as we know, is very notorious when it comes to crime. If I go by the numbers, as per the Canada Crime Index, the number of serious crimes reported per capita on any given year in Kitchener is actually less than in Toronto on any given year. So that does go hand in hand. Obviously, as we know, Toronto is kind of at a disadvantage being a major town. It does have its own issues when it comes to the gang crimes, even the other crimes, homicides, some of the serious crimes as well. And as we know, there are pockets in Toronto which are not at all safe to live or raise a family. Well, when compared to Kitchener, it's kind of a nice small suburban town. No major issues here. Definitely there are a couple of pockets you could avoid here, which may not be deemed as safe as the other parts of town. But on any given day, I could say, majority of Kitchener is deemed safer than Toronto in any given day. So the clear winner when it comes to crime is Kitchener. Okay, now let's talk about the entertainment and dining options between Kitchener and Toronto. Now Kitchener is going to struggle with the next couple of them. But talking about entertainment, Toronto is so much vast and diverse in terms of your entertainment options that you could easily spend a couple days just exploring the major hotspots in the city and still not be done. And I mean, there's so much to do for everyone. I mean, if you're a young family with kids, you have Ripley's Aquarium, you have Rogers, you have CN Tower. If you're a sports fan, you got Raptors game happening every now and then. You have got Blue Jays game happening in the Rogers Center. You can enjoy that. And there's so much to do for a sports fan. If you are a young couple, there are so many great romantic hotspots you could check out, local restaurants, local things to do. Distillery District is a classic example of that. So there's so much thing to do in Toronto when it comes to entertainment and dining. Versus Kitchener, well, I would definitely say it has definitely gotten better in terms of your options within the town. But I mean, if I were to compare with Toronto, it is nothing in comparison to Toronto. We have a few things to do. We have few places for kids to hang out, like this park that I'm in, which is a Victoria Park. Or you have places like Bingamans, which is a multi-activity amusement center, things like that. You have a lot of local breweries, dining options, for all kinds of dining, fine dining or a takeout. But when I compare to Toronto, Kitchener is definitely far short of Toronto in terms of entertainment and dining. So clear winner here is Toronto. All right, let's talk about shopping in Toronto versus Kitchener. So as we know, in Toronto, you have the Toronto Eaton Centre, which is actually one of the biggest malls, not just in Ontario, but one of the biggest in North America. So plenty of shopping options. Those are some of the stores you will find there in Eaton Centre. You will not even find here anywhere in Kitchener. So versus in Kitchener, you have Fairview Park Mall, which is a decent enough mall. You will definitely find most of your things. But hey, if you gotta do your fancy pants shopping, I can tell you, Eaton Center is a place to go. And as we know, without a doubt, being one of the biggest cities, not just in Canada, but the North America, Toronto does offer plenty of shopping options, even besides the Eaton Center. So clear winner when it comes to shopping is Toronto. Right, let's talk about the access to education between Toronto and Kitchener. So when it comes to Toronto, we have public schooling system that is served by the Toronto District School Board. And when it comes to the higher education, as we know, Toronto is home to a couple of great universities which are known for many of its world-renowned programs, one of which is University of Toronto. You have Ryerson University, and at the same time, you have George Brown College, that's in the heart of city as well. If I were to compare that with Kitchener, you have the public schooling system that's served by the Waterloo Regional District School Board and the Waterloo Catholic School Board, both of which do govern the public schooling system here in the Waterloo region, including Kitchener, of course. But at the same time, when it comes to higher education, Kitchener is home to Conestoga College, one of the biggest campus for the college. At the same time, if I were to take the Waterloo region as a whole, you have access to University of Waterloo, Laurier University, both of which arguably you can say it's in Waterloo, but hey, living in Kitchener, you could easily access and attend those universities. So as we know, even this couple of universities are renowned, very well known for some of its program. For example, computer science program is very hard to get into in the Waterloo University, and Laurier is very well known for some of its business programs. So it really depends on what you want to study when it comes to higher education, but both the towns do offer some plenty of good options when it comes to access to education. So we do have a tie here when it comes to education. And finally, let's talk about the access to green space and nature. So Kitchener has a clear advantage here. Being a suburban town, it does have access to plenty of green space. There are lots of natural areas. Huron Natural Area is one notable one with hectares and hectares of green space. You could have, if you're living in Kitchener, you could have, a hiking trail falling into your backyard, or a short walk, or at the most a short drive from anywhere in Kitchener that you live in. Versus Toronto, well, you do have plenty of parks. You have Lakefront Promenade, the parks across the lakeshore, but at the same time, it's hard to get around, and it's hard to find a lot of green space around Toronto, especially in the city core. And as we know, it does go, being one of the highly urban city, it's oftentimes obviously hard to find a green space for residents to enjoy. So they typically do have to get outside of the city when it comes to enjoying the green space, which is easy to access. I mean, if you were to go by the lakefront and try to find a parking in the weekend, it'll be hard to get by a parking spot on a given weekend in Toronto, because obviously it does attract a lot of tourists and the visitors as well. So it's oftentimes not as quiet as you would think. So that's the reason the clear winner here, and obviously with the right advantage being a suburban town, is Kitchener when it comes to the green space and nature. So we don't have a clear winner after comparing this 10 points. We have 4 for Toronto, 4 for Kitchener, and 2 of which are a tie. But at the very least, I hope now you have a better understanding of what fits your lifestyle. There's no right or wrong way about one town or another. I've lived in Toronto myself. I've lived in Kitchener for a few years now, and I can tell you both towns have plenty of things to offer, but you have to see at what stage of your life what fits your lifestyle, and that should be the decision maker for you. But hey, you know what? Whether you're thinking of moving in 9 days or 9 days, if Kitchener or anywhere around is your pick, be sure to reach out, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, or you can schedule a Zoom call. All the information right in the description below. Until next time, well, I do hope to show you around town.